Hey there guys, I'm back again with another team analysis. This is actually exactly the same team that I'm analysing. I just had a look at the one I put up last night. Still, it looked really unprofessional with that poor voice recording as well as a combination of other things. I mean, it was just really bad. So I'm going to try and concise that down, just make it a bit prettier using Pokemon Showdown and screen recording software, and hopefully just make this a little bit better. On my Emma Stone Love alt here. For those of you who don't know, that this is the alt I used for the Genesect suspect test, I believe, in which I used Trick Room Cresselia plus Choice Specs Eruption Heatran team, which is really fun. It's actually a bit inspired by VGC. It was inspired by Wolfglick's 2012 team, where he used Sunny Day Cresselia with substitute Heatran. I really like the idea of that, and sort of tried to put it into a way that it would work in singles. And the idea did change a lot. It went from being substitute Heatran with Trick Room support to just being a Choice Specs Heatran with Trick Room Cresselia. But in the end, it just ended up being Trick Room Cresselia carrying the whole team, because in Sun, that thing is really hard to take down. It's both a defensive threat in that it walled everything from Keldeo to some Terrakion to most importantly, special Landorus Eye. But then with Trick Room became an offensive threat and just hit everything on their weak special defense with four times effective special attacks like Ice Beam and Hidden Power Fire. So if you want to check that team out, I might link it in the description, although it's mostly irrelevant now, because yeah, that team was only really good for a very, very short time in that suspect test. But just some background there for you. Not really sure I'm even logged into this alt at all, but anyway, this is the kind of thing I need to stop doing, stop rambling. Get into the team. It's Tyranitar, Garchomp, Salamence, Aegislash, Venusaur, and Rotom H. If you play any VGC and you play on Battle Spot, you might notice that this team is very similar to a team a lot of the Japanese players are using, especially with Aegislash and Mega Venusaur. Those two are really things that you haven't seen too much across in the West until very recently, especially Aegislash. This thing was barely used in the West until about a month ago probably, and now I see it quite a lot. But it's good to see the thing getting more popular, because it's really, really good, and I want it to be one of the top used things, because it really deserves it. Start with Tyranitar. I'm running a Lum Berry set with a Taunt, Rock Slide, Flamethrower, and Ice Beam, and an EV spread of 252 HP, 20 defense, 220 special attack, 12 special defense, and 4 speed. The idea here is that the Lum Berry blocks sleep, most importantly, from all the sleep inducers in the format, most importantly Dark Void Smeargle. That's really what it's a tech for, but it also helps a lot against Sun leads with Sandstream, obviously. I mean, it can switch in after Charizard's Mega Evolved, hopefully. Avoid a sleep from their Chlorophyll Venusaur, and just sort of mess with them quite a lot with Rock Slide or even Flamethrower onto Venusaur. That's sort of the idea there, but obviously Lum is also helping quite a lot against the Moongus. Lum plus Taunt shuts it down. And yeah, I can't think of many of the situations Lum helps in. It blocks Thunder Wave if you really want to evade that, but most importantly it is for sleep here. It can also block Will-O-Wisp to stop Rotom from weakening a Rock Slide, but for the most part it's just for sleep. Sandstream ability, because it's the best ability for Tyranitar. It does get Unnerve as well, but that's largely useless. On the Unnerve front, I think Aerodactyl generally does that better. The only reason you'd really want to use Unnerve anything, I think, is if you're specifically trying to target Lum and Chesterberry, so using Dark Void Smeargle as a partner and just aiming on just relying on the fact that you're taking would-be counters to that set and shutting them down with Unnerve. I know Aaron Zeng's been getting a lot of usage out of Unnerve Aerodactyl, but that's only because there's no reason to use pressure really. There's very few low PP moves that Aerodactyl is going to be helping you against, because it's so frail. It's not really particularly good on the PP stalling front at all. So Unnerve is just always the best situation there. Anyway, already sidetracked. Sandstream shuts down Sun if you get it in after the Mega Evolution. Obviously not a good idea to switch in Tyranitar on the turn that Charizard Mega Evolves, and similarly, generally not a good idea to lead with it against Charizard Venusaur lead, because you will just get Solar Beam to turn 1. That's what leads on to the EVs. 2 HP and 12 special defense is EV to live Mega Charizard, Y Solar Beam, but just because you can live it doesn't mean you want to take it. That with a 20 defense guarantees you live a -1 Mega Marvel play rough, and as you see I have Salamence here for the Intimidate, so I find myself in that situation fairly often. 4 speed is just a speed creep. Other Tyranitar, I believe Tyranitar is the only Pokemon that sits at 61 base speed, so that's what that's there for, just beating other Tyranitar, although you probably end up speed tying more often than not still. And the rest is thrown into special attack with a modest nature just to boost Flamethrower and Ice Beam. Special or mixed Tyranitar is the most popular set because because you can't use tutor moves from previous games. Tyranitar's lost a lot of its good physical coverage options, whether that be Superpower, Low Kick, or the Elemental Punches. You've really only got Rock Slide, Crunch, and Brick Break now, and that's really not strong enough to sort of base a set around. So we've got Rock Slide here, keeping that just because it's the strong spread option off of Stab and 4 times effectiveness against Charizard and Talonflame. It's still doing the job despite no investment and a minus nature there. Flamethrower and Ice Beam are your coverage options. As I said, although you're hitting off a weaker stat, they're still really good here, and the investment means that you're still doing quite a lot of damage with them. That's especially the case when you're hitting on 4 times weaknesses, as you will be very often. For example, Flamethrower against Ferrothorn and Scizor, and Ice Beam against Garchomp and Salamence, which I have here myself. So that's the idea there. I think I've explained everything here, nothing really much more to say about Tyranitar. It's more of a tech for a few things, especially Dark Void, Smeargle, and Sun, and occasionally Trick Room if they don't have anything that can really stop Taunt, although the vast majority do now. Whether that be Aromavale, Aromatisse, Oblivious, or just Fake Out leads. So yeah, mostly just for those 2 matchups, but it does come in handy against some others as well. So next is Garchomp. Running standard Rocky Helmet and Rough Skin set, this just really shuts down Kangaskhan pretty well. Kangaskhan's such a massive threat that you sort of need Intimidate. I've got Salamence here and Will-O-Wisp. I've got my Rotom H to not get completely ruined by it. But on top of that, I'm running this set because it kind of neuters or spays rather Kangaskhan's female. It spays Kangaskhan. Because if you switch in on a Fake Out, Power Up Punch, or a Return, assuming it's not already boosted, they're taking about 60% from recoil damage alone. If they're running the more not the more common, if they're running the gaining in popularity Double Edge set, which I don't really approve of, then they're taking even more recoil damage than that because they're taking the Double Edge recoil. And basically, after all this damage, they're put into KO range of basically every other move I have on the team. So that's mainly what it's there for. It's also helpful, obviously, against opposing Garchomp. It sort of turns a Garchomp versus Garchomp matchup into, do we really want to kill each other? That's what it turns into, because if you Dragon Claw against them, obviously Rocky Helmet, Rough Skin takes you down to about 80%. They get taken down to about 20 themselves, and then vice versa happens, and you both die. That's always a fun scenario. And it's just good for trying to put your opponent off going for Sucker Punch against you, especially in the case of Bishop. Bishop really doesn't want to Sucker Punch against you because it loses its stash and then gets killed by Earthquake. So it's mainly for Kangaskhan, but there's a few niche scenarios where all this really does help. And generally just getting the extra damage makes it easier for something like Venusaur or Aegislash to pull out a late game. So the moveset is Protect, Dragon Claw, Earthquake, and Rock Slide. That's all complete standards. Dragon Claw is the only really usable physical Dragon Stab for Garchomp, unless you're running Choice Band, in which case Outrage is usable. But generally Outrage is frowned upon because it hits a random opponent and you just want the consistent damage, even if that consistent damage is fairly poor. Earthquake, weaker than Dragon Claw on average against neutral targets, but the spread damage helps, especially against Aegislash and Mega Mawile there. Oh yeah, and Tyranitar, and just generally other ground weak things. Rock Slide is your coverage move. It's especially useful because fire types are really coming into their own in VGC 2014. We're looking at Rotom H, which I have here, Talonflame, Charizard Y, and the occasional Torkoal or something. I can't think of any of the fire types, but you'd really rather Earthquake there. Rock Slide hits all those fairly hard. Also, if you've got Garchomp against 2 slower things, you're never truly out of the game because Rock Slide flinches are such a huge part of 2014. There's so many common things that get it, and they're all so fast. Stuff like Aerodactyl is one of the biggest weaknesses to the team because although I have multiple things that can switch in and KO it, stuff like Garchomp, but if it doesn't have Ice Fang, Salamence intimidates it, Aegislash just completely ruins it, it can't really touch Venusaur without a flying move, Tyranitar ice beams it. I have all these options against it. The fact it's 130 base speed and has Rock Slide with a 30% flinch chance means that it's just a real pain to deal with, and that's sort of a running theme of the team. Because it's so slow, Garchomp is my fastest thing. Fast Rock Slide users do end up being a problem. That's probably the biggest weakness I have here. So the EV spread here is 196 attack, 60 special defense, and 252 speed. You want to run max speed just because opposing Garchomp are really popular. Garchomp itself is probably the most popular Pokemon around, and you want to be able to outspeed that. As well, the fact that the 100 base speed tier, that sort of range, is a really, really big one to outspeed, because all the big things are in there. Mega Kangaskhan, Mega Charizard Y, and Non-Scarf Salamence all fit into that 100 base speed tier, and outspeeding those is absolutely critical. 196 attack just to get decent damage in. Most people run max, but I've actually chosen to move 56 across into special defense. Mainly because the 14 points you gain in attack won't be doing much in terms of percentage. If you look here, it's already 175. The difference between 175 and about 190 doesn't really change the damage output all that much to make it relevant. You'll maybe lose about 2 to 3% damage on a few things, but in the long scheme, in the long term, that doesn't really matter too much. Whereas the amount of bulk you gain percentage-wise by putting 60 in special defense, that's from, I believe, 99, or I can't do maths apparently. What? My math is terrible. Whatever. Oh, of course, yeah, you don't get 14, you get like 7, because it's doubles. Anyway, yes. Yeah, so as you see, you only go from 175 to low 180s by putting those extra 56 EVs in there, which isn't a massive change. Whereas the amount you gain from putting 60 in here is 105 to 113. In terms of percentage change, that is pretty huge, and that specifically guarantees you live a Mega Mawile. That's wrong. A Mega Manectric Hidden Power Ice, which is the most powerful Hidden Power Ice we generally come across. Sometimes you'll see Life Orb or Choice Specs Zapdos, but they're not really that common. So yeah, this is a good special benchmark to hit, and means you'll very rarely be KO'd by Hidden Power Ice, which most people would expect to be able to take you out. So next is Salamence. Going to try and rush through the rest of this, because this has taken fairly long already. Most of Choice Scarf, but I'm using Life Orb because I prefer the damage output. I think if I use Choice Scarf, I'd probably have a better option against fast Rock Sliders like Garchomp and Aerodactyl. So that is something I do need to test again in the future. Intimidate provides team support. Obviously, it's very good against Kangaskhan, opposing Garchomp, Mawile, all those big physical threats, and that's why Salamence is really here over some other special dragon like Hydreigon, something like that. That, as well as the fact that with max speed and Timid Nature, as you'll see here, it's speed tying with max speed Mega Kangaskhan, or it's speed tying at the very worst with Mega Kangaskhan and Mega Charizard, which is another advantage it has over Hydreigon. So the moveset is Protect, Draco Meteor, Flamethrower, Sunny Day. Protect is standard for basically anything that's not choiced or not super bulky in VGC. Stuff like Venusaur and Cresselia and all those sorts of things obviously can bypass using Protect because they're not really fearing getting KO'd outright too often. Draco Meteor is the nuke option. It's your strong stab, and yeah, it just works. It's really good. Flamethrower is the coverage option, as exactly the same with Tyranitar here. I'm using Flamethrower over Fire Blast because I'd rather base my strategy around knowing I'm going to get consistent damage than relying on a hit. I'd much rather just miss out on a KO, but at least know I'm not going to KO, than sort of bank on an 85% chance to beat something. If there's a really important KO I find I missed out by not running Fire Blast, then obviously I'll run Fire Blast, but for now Flamethrower's been doing the job just fine. And finally, Sunny Day. This is a really interesting option for me. It wouldn't work for most teams, but because I'm running Venusaur with Synthesis and a Rotom H, Sunny Day helps quite a lot. So Sunny Day boosts the recovery of Synthesis up to 75%, which is really, really helpful. And also, it helps if I want to bring Tyranitar and Venusaur in the same game. It means that when Tyranitar goes down, I can sort of Sunny Day with Salamence to bypass that sand again and make Venusaur be able to Synthesis. Generally, I try to avoid that scenario by I generally don't bring Tyranitar and Venusaur to the same game at all. But if I do have to, then that gives me a sort of option to save myself from just Venusaur gradually getting worn down. The EVs here, standard. It's really just a very slight difference to the 252 spread in that you effectively gain 2 points overall by doing this, but ultimately that's never really gonna change anything in the outcome of a battle. So Aegislash is something that's really popular in Japan, and I think is only just starting to get realised. That doesn't make sense. I think people are only just starting to realise how good it is over in the West, especially in Europe. I've been seeing this game quite a bit more popular. I'm running the standard leftovers and subset. The idea here is that Substitute, it lets you evade Sucker Punch from the big megas, that's Mawile and Kangaskhan, and it works sort of twofold. Firstly, you evade the Sucker Punch, and then you make them waste that turn effectively, and then you also don't hit the damage from that Sucker Punch the next turn. That's kind of important because Aegislash is obviously weak to Sucker Punch this gen, and with Substitute, it turns Aegislash from sort of a mediocre check to those two to a fairly good check / counter to them. Stance change, obviously, is the only option you've got, and that's why we're using King's Shield here, to make sure you're not stuck in Blade form, because you want to be switching to Shield form anytime you think you're going to be taking an attack. Substitute, also incredibly useful for blocking Spore from Amoonguss, and general status, really. Even though Aegislash is running a special set here, getting hit by Will-O-Wisp is still a bit annoying. You don't really want to be doing that. Aegislash is the kind of thing you want to be sticking around for a long time. It's not a glass cannon, really. So Will-O-Wisp, despite having leftovers to offset that a little bit, it's nice to get Substitute in to block that sort of status. Substitute also, you get so many chances to substitute that it just gives you free turns in the future. And a lot of the time people expect you just King Shield every other turn, because that's what a lot of the bad players do. So Substitute there gives you a way to take advantage of that if you're feeling a bit ballsy on the predictions. So your moves are Flash Cannon and Shadow Ball. They're just your basic stabs. There's very little else that Aegislash has moveset-wise that you'd be tempted to use. Wide Guard I've actually already bred for, so I can get that back with the Heart Scale if I want to. And that's a potential option if I want to help deal with Rock Slide users better. But for now, I think this set is fine. Sacred Sword also, if you're really weak to Tyranitar. But I think I'm relatively well covered there. Some obscure hidden powers can also be used. Hidden Power Ice for Garchomp and Salamence, because you don't OHKO those, obviously. So if you're really weak against those, then Hidden Power Ice could be an option. But ultimately, if you're weak to Garchomp and Salamence, then your team is probably really bad already, and Hidden Power Ice Aegislash isn't going to save that. And finally, Shadow Sneak is probably usable if you're in dire need of priority against anything. Something like, I don't know, something fast. Greninja or something, I don't know. So that's the idea there. EV's 236 HP, 196 special attack, modest, with a 76 special defense. This defensive investment guarantees you live a Mega Charizard Heat Wave in the sun. I think that's timid, not modest, but I'll have to double check that. Which is really useful. Generally, since I have so many fire resists, I'm not going to be put in that situation too often, but it's nice to be able to know I can live that if I need to. And the rest is just in special attack to boost the output of these two. So very quickly trying to get through these last two. Mega Venusaur is my Mega for the team. I think it's really good. I'm surprised it's not used much more, because it's really, really difficult to take down. It's almost impossible to 2KO unless you're a Mega or Gardevoir or Talonflame. Those are the only things in the game that can really reliably 2KO this thing. Or like Choice Specs, Salamence or something, I don't know. Really, the only things that can 2KO are fairly obscure. So start with the ability Chlorophyll. The idea is that it's better than Overgrow, because most of the time you're not going to get put into Overgrow range when you're in your base form, and if you are, you're probably switching into things that you really shouldn't be switching on in the first place. So Chlorophyll means that if you come in on a Sun team with Sun already up, then you can Mega Evolve, have Chlorophyll for the duration of that turn, and still have Thick Fat and the boosted defenses and special attack for the rest of the turn as well. So you effectively have a Chlorophyll and Thick Fat Venusaur for that turn, meaning you get the really fast Sleep Powder with the bonus of the extra bulk. Sometimes you can also go for a Chlorophyll Synthesis, which helps quite a lot, and a couple of times I've gone for a weird route where I've gone for Salamence with Sunny Day, brought in Venusaur and used it as a more offensive option for the team. by just going for sort of like a chlorophyll sweep with Giga Drain and Sludge Bomb. As you can see, I'm running Modest with 84 special attack, so that's really nothing to scoff at. In its base form or in its mega form, it's still hitting very hard with these stab moves. So the set is Sleep Powder, Giga Drain, Sludge Bomb, Synthesis. Sleep Powder I rely on too much. For anyone who played Pokemon before Will-O-Wisp got better accuracy, you'll know that 75% accuracy is a horrible thing to bank on, but it's sort of a necessary evil for Venusaur. It shuts down so much, and it's part of why Venusaur's so good, so I think it's a staple on this set. Giga Drain and Sludge Bomb use stab options, but also have pretty decent coverage against everything that's not Steel or a Dragon Flying type like Salamence, but they generally can't do too much to you anyway. So Giga Drain and Sludge Bomb with special attack investment is 2 at KOing a lot of things, most notably Garchomp and Salamence most of the time, which is really, really helpful. And then Synthesis here is just because, as I mentioned earlier, it's really hard to 2 at KO this thing. If you manage to target down Kangaskhan, Talonflame, stuff like that early game, and as you can see I already have a lot of options for all these. Like the vast majority of my team is already pretty geared towards taking down Talonflame and Mega Kangaskhan. Venusaur really just has a field day against the rest of the team. If they're left with Garchomp, Salamence and Rotom Wash or something like that against Venusaur, then a 1v3 scenario is definitely very possible to pull myself back from. If I manage to get Venusaur in the sun with Synthesis, then it's basically game over. You get 75% recovery there. The EVs, 252 HP and 84 special defense guarantees you live a Mega Charizard Timid Overheat in the sun. Very, very useful because it means you can Synthesis back for 75%, and they're in a really, really bad position. The speed is the speed creep on Rotom Wash. I think you hit 111, that's correct, which I believe outspeeds everything up to 28 speed Rotom Wash, and other Rotom forms, obviously. That's specifically what it's there for, and there's a few other things that you outspeed too, but that's mainly what it's there for. And then the rest put into special attack with a Modest Nature. I found that running Modest is generally more useful than boosting your defenses and special defenses, because you already hit such ridiculous stats in these that it's the percentage difference that you gain from running extra defense doesn't make too much difference in the long run. Whereas the damage output you get from running Modest is really, really, really useful. For example, as I said earlier, 2 at KOing these big two. So last is Rotom Heat. I'm using this over Rotom Wash for the resistances, and I think fire types are basically a staple for every single team nowadays, given that Sun's so popular. You have all the resistances to fire and grass, which is really important for the Sun matchup. And you also completely shut down Aegislash and Mega Mawile with your Overheat or Will-O-Wisp if you want to avoid the Sucker Punch from the latter. I went the Citrus Berry set. I know Safety Goggles is pretty popular, but I prefer the recovery, and I think I already have enough options for Venusaur leads. Sorry, that's Venusaur Charizard Sun leads. I think I have enough options against those to not have to warrant using Safety Goggles. So I'm running Citrus for the recovery, with this reset of Protect, Thunderbolt, Overheat, and Will-O-Wisp, which I found to be perfect. I haven't really needed to use anything else. There's a few other options over Protect here, like Light Screen or Thunder Wave, but I found that, this set's fine. Occasionally I wanted to use Thunder Wave to shut down Chlorophyll Venusaur, but, it's okay. Most of the time you just want to Overheat into that anyway, so that's it, really. The EVs had 220 HP, 60 defense, 92 special attack, 100 special defense, and 36 speed. You can see down here that 36 speed actually hits the same number as Mega Venusaur, which is a really big oversight on my part. You really don't want two Pokemon to be hitting the same speed, because you want to sort of know what order everything's going to happen in as close as you can. So I really should put an extra few in Rotom speed here. So again, that's to outspeed 28 speeds Rotom Wash, which is really the most common I've seen thus far, or rather the fastest I've seen so far. Although I'm sure that'll change later into the season, and I could be seeing myself running anywhere up to like about 80 speed towards the end of the season. So I'm not really sure what the rest of these do, because I just stole these from Eggy Emporium. Same with the Tyranitar spread. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but I stole this from Wolf Glick's analysis on Eggy Emporium. I stole this from the Knight of Wireland's analysis for his Hail team. But it's working well for me so far. I think the defense and HP does something to do with Tyranitar and Garchomp Rock Slides, but don't quote me on that. And I've just gone with a Modest Nature with 92 special attack to just maintain that good power output with Overheat and Thunderbolt. Will-O-Wisp here just for, as I said earlier, shutting down Mega Kangaskhan and various other fire types. It also changes Garchomp from a solid counter into a really bad check, I guess, to Rotom, since it doesn't want to take a Will-O-Wisp unless it's running Lum Berry. So that's the team there. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll put the importable in the description, and I'll take down the old video because it's so ugly. But I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll get some videos using the team like an actual battle video up sometime later in the week. So I'll see you next time. Bye.